Hey, ideators and entrepreneurs, CUNY Startups here. Welcome to CUNY and Beyond, the podcast dedicated to helping aspiring entrepreneurs through storytelling. We're excited to dive into the entrepreneurial endeavors of CUNY students, alum, and bonus entrepreneurs who are willing to share their valuable insights with you. Join us for today's show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to CUNY and Beyond. My name is Gail Yankosik. I'll be your host today, and I have a wonderful person with me who you're going to enjoy listening to. We have the pleasure of working together and mentoring students, and we'll get to that in our conversation. But first, let me introduce Kwasi Gyasi. He is the one of a founding partner and business consultant at MyUberLife Consulting, which fits right into where I want to segue right away. Is tell us, it's an unusual consulting company, Kwasi, in the fact that it doesn't, I think, I may be wrong and you'll correct me, but I don't think it follows a traditional mold. I think that if anyone looks at your website, they'll see that there's something different about it. It imparts a very different way of helping people, I guess, or, as a consultant. So tell us a little how you started it and what's your goal behind it?
So, I think the first thing that kind of jumps out at you is the three kind of barking wolves. And, our belief and our philosophy is that you should be a wolf about your dream. So when you see those wolves, that's really the energy that's behind it is, we believe that everybody has a dream, some sort of ideal state that, is driving their actions, driving their decisions. And we wanted to build a system to help them manifest those dreams. And we feel that the wolf embodies the spirit behind doing so, taking what you do so seriously that you're a wolf about it, that you're relentless about it. So that's what the whole energy of the website is. But in terms of how we started, how we got here, our background is very diverse. My background is very diverse from a cultural standpoint. I'm half Jamaican, half Ghanaian, so that gives me a multicultural lens because I grew up in this country, but I have these two parents behind me, and this diversity of perspective to bring to bear. And very similar than my business partners do as well. One of my business partners from Venezuela, his background is in Latin America and the Caribbean. Another business partner, same thing. But then when it comes to our education, my background is in economics, but it's also in marketing. I have, by way of social osmosis, I have an engineering degree because my business partners are both engineers. And, we always looked at culture. We looked at, the creative sectors, the creative fields with a certain affinity. And we weren't traditionally in those industries, so we were always thinking about like what value could we bring to bear in those spaces. We love fashion, we love music, we love fine art, we love entertainment. And we were always talking about the decisions that we would make or the things that were happening culturally using all these different lenses that we had to bring to bear. And we said, what could we do to create value and help some of these people in those spaces do what they do better? And a lot of what we realized is that there was organization and management and just the traditional business thinking and engineering thinking that was missing, that we could add to the creativity. And then also looked at what was happening from a communal standpoint and say, if we put all of that together, times commerce, that we can create some impact. And, just to give you more context around the business, we decided to just formalize it around management consulting because we said, we're polymaths at heart. We don't look at anything as just like one silo or one kind of tower of knowledge. We look at it as you need many towers of knowledge to solve big problems. And we were only interested in the big problems that would help people, really make an impact, not just today, but also into tomorrow. So we're like, well, how do we help the dreamers, the tinkerers, the neurodivergent, the creatives, the executives, the existing corporate leaders, and all these different people, entrepreneurs, small and large. How do we help all of them create businesses that can create positive impact now, but also into tomorrow in a sustainable kind of anti-fragile way that's designed to benefit from the chaos and uncertainty of our current world and thrive in that climate, right? And we also recognize that there were a lot of dismissed and overlooked communities that were lacking resources, lacking knowledge, lacking wisdom, lacking perspective that we need to also pull into the fold, because we recognize that there's different forms of intelligence. And the root of intelligence is really about taking information, synthesizing it so that you can create something. That culminated into this whole, MyUberLife, which literally, if you unpack it, means my super life, this MyUberLife vision, and this MyUberLife business. And that's what we're doing today.
I think that your company puts an emphasis on thinking, not on just the surface, to look beyond and almost to look not at, strictly, dollars and cents, but to look at the soul of the company, the soul of the person starting, so that there can be a connection, so that those people who come to you don't lose that part of themselves, but get even more from it by that.
I want to also speak to that and add to it as well, because that's a great point. One of the things that we do differently, and I think that separates us, is that while we're also looking at different forms of value and different types of people to work with and recognizing the different forms of culture or intelligence, we're also looking at what's happening culturally constantly. Mm-hmm. And we give it respect and we give it the necessary gravitas that I think different forms of culture deserve. And we infuse that into the business process. We infuse that into the branding process. We look at what's actually happening in the world at all the different levels and in all the different corners. Globally, what are the different macro kind of trends culturally, but then also locally in these kind of nuanced and latent spaces. And we use that to inform the decision-making and inform the strategy. Now, that's one side of it. But I think to your point and what you just said, which is very keen, we recognize that the act of building and creating something is a spiritual endeavor. And we have a lot of respect for this, the spiritual inclinations and the act of faith that is required to take an imaginative thought and turn it into something tangible and that has the potential to impact people in a positive way, whether it be through aspiration or inspiration, or just tangibly solving a problem that didn't have a solution before. So to your point, we look at the individual and we recognize all those different dimensions to them. And we start with what's going on with why they started it in the first place. And then we let that inform the entire architecture of the business, the brand, and the decisions that are being made. What's your value system? Right. What do you believe? Who are you? What do you love doing? And really just kind of get into the nuances of that. And then we have a formula for taking that information and synthesizing it in a way that can inform the decision around like your financial plan, or the way that you deal with your customers and how you decide to retain them, and all these different aspects to the business system. We still start from that genesis point, and then we grow it out.
I think that it's something which kind of works into what my next question is going to be, is that you look at the whole person, and that's part of it. It's not just the business side. It's taking into consideration all aspects of their life, where they are at that stage in their life, and mixing it up and putting it in the stew and shaking it up and stirring it, and then coming out with a plan. And part of you, where we first met, was working at CUNY as mentors. So tell me a little bit, at mentors at the CUNY School of Public Health, tell me how your connection to CUNY came about with mentoring, not just students, because in that particular program, they're not only students, they could be from any area. But tell me how that started, because I found your mentoring style so remarkable. I learned so much from you, and I really did. And I've been doing this for a couple of years now, but I learned such a lot from listening to you. you talk with all these people. And so tell me how you got started and how that CUNY connection happened, and then how you approached your mentoring.
Well, so one of the things that also we at the company really focus on is approaching things from a first principle standpoint. And while we were steeped in the creative industries like fashion, music, and fine art, we weren't neglecting the larger kind of infrastructure issues that were going on domestically and globally. And we were always focused on, how do we solve these larger problems that bleed into the creative communities as well, because we're all humans, we're all affected by education and, lack of healthcare and things of that nature. So, we were already working on projects to address issues around affordable housing and education. And, one of the other areas that we were deeply concerned about was health. Not just physical bodily health, but just mental health as well. And we started having conversations that led to a couple meetings with people over at CUNY. And, we realized that public health had all these different dimensions to it that the larger public was not aware of. Right. And we said there's an interesting exercise here in making the act of being healthy more desirable so that people would take it more seriously in all the different dimensions of what healthy means, not just physically, but mentally, socially, and even spiritually. Yeah. And folding that into something that could be seen as desirable and worthy of people's attention, which is the greatest commodity of our day, is what are you focused on? Where is your attention at? And us coming from the cultural spaces and working with luxury brands like, Diageo and Cartier and things of that nature, we really understood how you create desire around something that might not necessarily be desirable, right? There's something that's not necessarily a need, but is more of a want. How do we take that line of thinking and place it around something that actually is a need or should be a need?
Right.
So that led us into CUNY. And then in terms of the style of mentorship, one of the biggest things that I think we have focused on is meeting people exactly where they are and speaking to their cultural context first, as well as making sure that we're in the right container. And what I mean by container is the right context in the conversation so that there's a greater likelihood to have your message be received in the right tone, in the right way, the right spirit. And also to not look at things as sort of a top-down kind of authoritative, I'm better than you or I know more than you kind of approach, but rather this is a bilateral bridge of communication. I'm probably going to learn something from you. You're going to learn something from me. We're going to kind of like share this conversation.
Certainly,
and it's going to be more of
that way.
Yeah, it's going to be more of a dialectic than this debate where I'm trying to force something on you. I'm trying to educe or pull something out of you that's probably already there.
Yes, I think that's important because I was just going to say your capability with listening to them first, speak about their projects, speak about the business they want to start, think about the work they put into it. You listened, which was very important. And then you tried to pull out of them without telling them, well, this is what you should do, but pull out of them where they were along this path, where the journey was going to go, and let them see it for themselves. And that's a wonderfully unique ability to do that with people. And I feel you have that. And it was very successful because it forced people, we go back to that word thinking, it forced people who were in these situations who wanted so desperately to be successful and work so hard to think about each of the steps along the way, not telling them that, okay, this is where you are now, but you've got to get to this point, letting them stretch that journey out. And I think that was very important. I mean, did you feel that that's what you were accomplishing? I witnessed it and felt that's what you did.
I definitely was my goal was to ask more questions as opposed to just push more information on them.
Yeah.
Because I genuinely believe that they know more about what they're doing than I do. And I think what's important is to while you're doing whatever it is that you're doing, less about finding the perfect answer or the right answer, and just building more of an intuition for the entire system and the container that you're in, so that you can just intuitively start building an alphabet from it. And what I mean by that is, if you have a clear understanding of like why you're doing what you're doing, right? And you understand what it is that you're truly passionate about, you understand the problem that you're kind of trying to solve, or at least what a space in the world actually needs. And you are very clear on like what you're good at and what you're bringing to the table. Out of that mix, and I'm not dismissing the thousands of hours that went into the proper sequencing of questions. And we also have like some technical and mathematical equations that we leverage to increase the probability of success as we're building something. But I think overall, there is a kind of harmony that is created by asking certain kinds of questions over and looking at things from different angles, and trying to get to this empirical position, like the ground level of like why you're doing something. What's the root of where you're coming from? And then once that light switches on, everything else is very easy to come up with. The decisions that are made from that root become very fluid. And I think the process is really about exploring that route and then getting to a position where there's harmony amongst your team and the group of decision makers, so that you can fly from there. And that's essentially what I was trying to do with everybody that I was speaking to.
Yeah, I think you were successful in that. And I think it was, I think there were moments throughout our mentoring where you could see their face change with the realization of what you were trying to elicit from them clicked. And it was an important moment, because from that moment on, they could take that deep breath and say, okay, I think I can do this, because now I found that core, and I can go from that. So I think you were wonderfully successful in mentoring people.
I think also there's a certain level of as educators and as mentors, there's a level of confidence or reassurance that you give people, for them to believe in themselves and believe in what they're doing and believe in what they're seeing. Because sometimes people dismiss what they're seeing, or they're unsure, they doubt themselves. Like, that's a big part of the creation process. It's just doubt. So if you have somebody that can bring some level of confidence or inspire some courage in you to say, no, you got it. That's good. I see value in that. I think that's tremendously powerful.
Right. Yeah, you're okay. I always tell them, as we get to the part where they have to do live presentations, remember, you're going in front of people who don't know anything about your company. You're the expert. You're the person who knows more than anyone else in the room, and take that confidence with you, because they don't know if what you think you said was a fumble or a mistake. Just present it with confidence, and you'll be fine. I want to move into the explosion of AI.
Yes.
in the world that touches everything. It touches education, it touches health, it touches business, it touches everything. What has been your experience, and what are your observations about the good and the bad of this going forward?
Well, I think the pro that everyone, I think, can agree on is productivity, the ability to infinitely expand one's ability to produce in whatever way you could possibly imagine. I think a big issue right now is we haven't spent a lot of time thinking about, what is infinitely possible. In other words, to put it another way, we have a lot of limiting beliefs and a lot of limiting narratives that we've adopted from our parents and from culture, things of that nature. But we just have a lot of limiting beliefs that we have to start removing and start thinking more expansively, more abundantly, and recognize that the general rule of thumb was that there's ideas are everywhere, but it's more about the execution. And to some degree, that's still true. But I think as we march closer into this age of AI, which we're already in, but as we march deeper, I should say, into it, that equation is being flipped on its head. And I think the value now is more so around the idea and why the idea is being presented. What's the context and narrative around it? The execution now is being automated. I think people are still struggling with the possibility of being in a space where you no longer have limits, where it's the limit truly is your imagination. And, just to say, in terms of cons, there will be an impact on employment. I don't think that's something that we can, avoid talking about. We have to talk about that. That's going to displace a lot of people. And there's going to have to be some level of retraining. But I think I don't believe that we can take a step forward without some level of rational optimism and hope. And my hope is that people have more neuroplasticity than society would say, and that everybody's capable of learning these new tools and how to think about partnering with the tool to meet the desires that you have, and to, let's say, spend more time considering what those desires actually are, outside of the traditional influences of your local community or society. Like, spend time with yourself, literally, and think about like what it is you truly want and why you want it.
I think it's also get over the fear of working with it. But there's a fear that because people don't understand it, fear goes with it, and that you have to kind of adjust your thinking to accept it, but not use it incorrectly. I think of education. I think of the fact that it can write papers or it could do something like that. And we have to be careful of that aspect of it, that it does things that we should be doing ourselves. But I also think the enhancements it can bring to our life.
To add also, I think it's also an amazing time for people who have very naturally creative or imaginative kind of spirits. There's a lot of jobs or a lot of schooling that has been obsolete for some time, or at least been thought of as not profitable in the market, like expository writing or certain liberal arts kind of related, humanities related degrees, things of that nature, and philosophy. And I think now is actually a perfect time for that kind of thinking. People who are very polymathic in nature, who study multiple kinds of disciplines, who are good at synthesis, who have different types of skill sets, who can, combine different kinds of novel ideas, put them together. This is the perfect time for anybody who is like that. And I think traditionally we always tell people to focus on one thing and go very, very deep in that and be narrow. But now we actually need to encourage people to be wide.
I had not even thought of that. That's a breakthrough that could be used so positively for so many people. Before we go, I would love to talk to you for another half hour. But do you feel you have a superpower?
I always felt like my superpower had to do with my extreme level of detail. I would always see things in the minutia and in the nuances, and I've always just been like a naturally detail oriented person, almost to a fault. People find it sometimes annoying because I could be long winded, but it's just to me that's where the beauty is. It's like in seeing the detail of something. Yeah. So I spent a lot of time unpacking that and describing it and exploring it, and it's what feeds into my curiosity about things, because if I look at something long enough, I start to see the detail, and in the detail I start to see the beauty, and then that feeds on itself, and then I go deeper.
Right. If I had to choose, I would say truth for you. I have seen you truth.
That's part of it.
I have seen and heard you talk to people about truth very gently and let them see the truth for themselves. So that would be the word I would use for you. It's been wonderful once again to talk with you, and thank you for taking the time today. And I hope I see you soon, maybe over the summer if we're mentoring together. I don't even know where we are or what's going on, but hopefully we will. So thank you so much.
We'll see each other again soon, and thank you for having me, and I appreciate it.
My pleasure. It was delightful to talk to you. Thank you so much. Take care, Kwasi.
Cheers.
Consistency, communication. It's like a lost art of living, but I'ma keep giving and show the whole